Did you know that world building is the part that almost every single writer gets stuck at when they're trying to write a book? Now, here's the thing. If you're stuck in world building, you're probably building too much. You're creating a world that feels impressive, but you're not creating a world that feels real. And if it doesn't feel real, it doesn't matter how much lore you've written. The only thing that makes a world feel real is what happens in it. So there's the danger, there's the risks, there's the choices. And if that's not moving, then your world's not alive. So in this video, I'm going to tell you exactly how to fix that. Not the theory, not the fluff, just a real practical way to build a world that feels alive and is worth reading about. All right. So if you're stuck and you're trying to get this part of the book, you're trying to build this immersive world, the first thing you need to do is stop thinking about the world like it's a project, right? Forget the map, forget the lore, forget the timeline, forget the politics. Start with a moment, a character, a decision, a danger, and then write the scene where something happens. And then you let the world reveal itself through that moment. Don't write about how the city was built. Write about what it feels like for a character to walk down the street at midnight. You know, write tension, write fear, write the way the shadows press in. That's the stuff that makes a world feel alive. Now, the character doesn't have to care about the history. As a matter of fact, they probably don't. They care about the stuff that's trying to kill them or the goal they're trying to reach. When you're writing a scene, you only want to build the parts of the world that affect the character in that moment. What are they stepping on? Is there anything blocking their path? If you're writing about a jungle, then you don't describe the whole jungle. You write about the snake that's under their foot. You write about the humidity that's sticking to their skin, the sound of something moving in the brush that they can't quite see. You build the world around the danger, around the obstacles. That's what matters. Because if it doesn't affect the character, then it doesn't matter. Readers only care about the part of your world if it affects the character directly. Because this is what shapes the threats. This is what shapes the stakes. They force the character to make a choice, and everything else is just background noise. And this is where writers mess up. They think, I need to describe everything. No, you don't. You need to describe things that hit, things that matter. If the world is dangerous, what's it smell like? What's it feel like? What's the air feel like? What sound makes the character stop in their tracks? Readers don't need to know the shape of every building. They don't need to know how many wars have taken place in this land. They need to feel the tension in the air. They need to feel what it's like to be there, right next to the character, trying to navigate that world. Focus on the dangerous, the strange, things the character notices. That's how you build a world without getting into this stuck of endless descriptions that don't really matter. And a lot of writers, they get stuck at the lore dump part of the book where they think they need to put all of the world's history onto a page for everything to make sense. But the best worlds that feel old and feel real because they do that because of the consequences of all those things, not the exposition of those things. So show the cracks, show the ruins, show the scars of all these old wars, the crumbling fountain, the bullet hole riddled wall. If your city is ancient, don't tell me how many dynasties it's survived. Show me the broken statue. Show me the way the streets don't line up because they were built over something older, maybe something forgotten. Let the readers feel the history. Don't explain it. If they're curious, they'll fill in the gaps themselves in their head. And if it doesn't matter to the story, it doesn't matter to the reader. So write only the history that has teeth, the history that affects what the character is going to be doing or is doing right now. Everything else, save it for later, or better yet, just cut it out completely. This is the simplest advice that I can give. Your world needs to feel like a character of its own. It should have a problem. It should have a solution. It should be an obstacle. It needs to get in your character's way. If your character is crossing the Sahara, don't write about how endless the dunes are. Write about how thirsty, how hot. Write about the way every step feels like it might be their last because there's no civilization in sight. If the city is corrupt, don't explain the potty. Ugh. If the city's corrupt, don't explain the politics. Show the guard taking a bribe or a shifty glance from a merchant. Let the character feel how the world is pushing against them. And that's how you make the world real. That's how you make it feel dangerous. And if your world doesn't feel dangerous or lived in, then it's just scenery. It's like those old spaghetti westerns where they had the reel of the same background being cranked behind them. It's not real. You can tell it's fake. It's like watching the same background pass in a Tom and Jerry cartoon. And no one cares about the scenery unless the scenery has to do with the story. If you're waiting to get your world right because you're afraid you'll miss something, stop because you're going to miss something. And that's the point. You'll figure it out when you write the story. And when you hit a problem, maybe something doesn't add up. That's when you just go back a few paragraphs or chapters and you fix it. But don't wait to start writing the story until you have the exact universe all mapped out. It gets built as the character moves through it. Again, if something is wrong, you fix it in editing. But don't stop trying to figure out lore that might not even matter to the story. And if your world starts to feel too big, if it starts to feel too complicated, or just maybe too heavy, then move the character. Put them in danger. Make them do something. Make them go somewhere. And then describe the things that they're seeing. Not, they saw the building that was built in 1492. No. As they passed behind the shadow of the old town hall, they noticed the bullet holes shined in the sunlight. Something along those lines. Something reminiscent of a time gone by that they are seeing, but not really seeing because they're moving through it. You don't walk down your street and you don't think that's the bank that was built in 1992. It used to be a subway. You don't think that. It is yet another shell of a building that has occupied a space that it used to be, or something along those lines. I know that was my feeble attempt at trying to sound poetically proficient in my prose, but you get what I'm saying. A character who's moving and doing things will always build the world faster than you can with a notebook or a whiteboard or a checklist of things that you need to have in order. So here's the challenge. If you're stuck in world building, stop. Write one moment, one dangerous scene where the character has to fight the world itself to survive. Or that they have to get through this part of the world to get to the goal, to get to the danger, to save the day or find your MacGuffin. That's how it feels to have a world that you can bleed in. It's how it feels to get lost in that world. Because any other way is going to make your world feel flat. It's going to feel like a computer printout. And when you're done, if you realize something's missing, that's awesome. How to go back and figure out how to change what you've already written to get it to fit into the story. All right. If this gave you a lot to think about, gave you some more ideas, let me know. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment. Let me know if you're stuck in world building hell and how you're going to get out of it. Or tell me your best trick for world building. Either way, we could talk about it in the comments. I look at everyone. I try to reply to everyone. I'm doing good so far. But until then, keep writing.